to another episode of Real Talk, the show where we go there and discuss the things that everyone's thinking about aesthetics, but no one is saying. So today, a very interesting topic, we're going to discuss how to not look fake. And I think it's fair to say our clients in particular are quite obsessed with not looking fake.
Absolutely.
Do you think there are other companies out there who perhaps...
Completely. There's a divide between I need to look like I've had loads of treatment because it's a status symbol, it's associated with wealth. I've even heard one of these celebrities, kind of minor celebrities, saying that's what she does instead of a Gucci handbag now.
Really?
So it's specifically to look like you've had treatment.
Yeah.
And then you have the other side of the spectrum who are dying not to look like they've had treatment. They're just trying to restore themselves and look natural.
Yeah. And I do think, maybe we can come back to this later, but I do think there's an interesting line whereby you can still look in proportion and not weird, but still have really quite substantial lips, but not weird. You know what I mean? So let me ask you a different way around. Why does Courtney Cox or someone like that? Why was a time when she looked weird? What's she doing wrong? It's
basically because your face. Most people's faces they grow mathematically, like proportionately. So
they grow.
As you develop, as your faces grow, as your face grows, it grows in proportion to almost a mathematical code. And if you, so people's, the ratio, the size of your eyes or the size of your cheeks is related to the size of your lips or your chin or your jawline. There's some sort of pattern that emerges through DNA expressing itself in a predictable way. You know, that's essentially the theory. But when you alter just one part of your face, you break the code. Like you can tell that there's some sort of disharmony or disproportion going on that a human face wouldn't have. And I use that word purposely. Like it's unnatural enough that we can spot it. We know that's not human. It's something else. It's synthetic. So you're breaking the code, the mathematical code that should be producing a natural, harmonious looking human face.
The golden ratio.
That's one of many codes. But that's a really nice one to talk about. So I did actually bring these because these actually show you one of the key ratios. So I don't know how well you can see that on the screen, but we'll probably overlay something so you can. But it's basically the ratio between that and that is all over our bodies. So I often use the finger as an example to show how ubiquitous or how present it is. So the ratio of the last bit of your bone or your phalanx, and the next one is the same as when you increase the ratio is the next phase, and it's actually the same then from the next bit of your bone into your arm, and it carries on so that your whole body is in proportion. So this is the same with your teeth. So the middle tooth is usually the narrow one, the other way around, the broad one, and the next one gets wider, and in your face you have it as well. So ratio between your lips, lower half of between your middle of your lips and your chin, and the top half should fit with the ratio. So yeah. So your chin has never fitted the ratio. You have a slightly strong chin, which is good.
Strong as in, sorry, just get a little consultation here. So strong as in going out, or
you have a long face.
A long face.
Yeah, which fits with you would describe yourself that way. You have slightly on the longer side.
Yeah.
So, and part of that mainly is your chin. But
then what about going, or this is a different question? Just getting a little consultation because I feel like my chin is receding recently. Like in terms of filler.
Yeah, so that's a different
right.
cause. That's projection of your chin. Your chin should fit on on what's your facial plane basically. So it should be at the same level. If you look at your face at 90 degrees to it, it should be level with the bridge of your nose, your chin.
Okay,
so if your chin is slightly recessed.
So I'm talking about profile.
So profile's a different rule.
Right.
There is possibly a golden ratio with the length of your jaw and where it meets your cheek. So there are ratios you can try and spot all over the face, but the key message is it's mathematical, and the maths is actually built into our brains almost in the way that an instinct is built in. Because if you think about what beauty is, you're essentially looking for health, because human beings are trying to weigh up where to invest their energy to maximize their chance of survival. This is the evolutionary way of looking at it. And so when something doesn't fit natural, it jars with us slightly. And culture can overlay that. So I think if the meaning that you give that treatment is that person has got wealth and status and power, you might think that it's kind of a form of, it's attractive. I wouldn't call it beauty, but it's attractive. You see that in African tribes. If you look at that, the way that they present themselves is obviously not natural, but within their culture, there is status and power associated with the things they do with, those tribes I can't remember where they are, but, they have the lip plates and the neck. Those things are within the context of their society a status symbol. Mm-hmm. The same thing can happen within our societies, that you have a massively over-treated face, but it's associated with wealth and power.
What do you think?
But it's not beauty. That's the key thing. It's different.
Yeah. What do you think about this whole thing whereby you can fill out your face to the max and have 50 million syringes, but your neck is always gonna let you down? How do you feel about that?
Well, you can treat the neck as well. People tend to. It's quite a big area, and it's often requires more invasive procedures like surgery and skin tightening. You can treat it, but yeah, it is. But the neck's is symbolic of the same as all the problem we face all over the face, which is if you say, for example, if you restore someone's nose to mouth line, and you keep fixing that, you can get rid of that. But if you haven't treated their cheeks, they start to look like a monkey. Well, so it's the disconnect.
Yeah, that's a really good example to use, because actually nose to mouth lines in our industry, that's like a basic treatment that most clinicians who come into the industry, they know how to do that, don't they? So then they might hammer that and go and do too much of that with clients, when actually it may be that. So tell us a bit more about so let's say I had sort of deep nose to mouth lines, I shouldn't just be having them filled, should I? Yeah,
well, we're always in a battle with trying to treat the thing that is really annoying someone versus trying to be holistic. The perfect treatment, you have little amounts all over your whole face. Each time you go, you make little tweaks all over. But psychologically, what happens to people is they are irked by one specific line, and they want that line gone. And it also makes sense in terms of improving their well-being that you make sure you get the thing that really bothers them. So we tend to treat the one specific thing a fair amount of the time, but really the advice would be, don't forget everything else. And don't just treat that because you got a lot of reward from treating that the first time. And this is certainly a lot of people will do this, which is, that really made a big difference to me. That's now my treatment. I'll do that every 6 months and I'll be happy. And 5 years down the line, no lines here, but everything else has aged and it looks wrong, because our brains are incredibly good at spotting what's not natural. So a small shift, the fact that your cheeks are aging worse than your nose to mouth lines, initially you may not notice, but 5 years down the line, it's really obvious there's something not quite right. People can't put their finger on it. They don't say, oh, your nose to mouth line's treating your cheeks aren't. They just know this is not the normal ratio of what a human being looks like, and it just looks a bit strange. So ideally what you're doing is making little adjustments in lots of places and keeping the whole picture in mind, which is hard because that's not how people see their faces.
And also, let's be honest, budget comes into consideration, because if you're having a little bit everywhere and you're spreading it out, that is going to cost more. That's
correct. Even if you use relatively small volumes in each place, it is still your whole face. So there is often a tension between trying to get the best result or just making sure that you get the key things. But that doesn't mean that in the long term you shouldn't work on all sorts of things. I think even if you don't increase your budget, you can still decide, I'm not going to just treat this line for the next 10 years and do nothing else. I might on some treatments do something else, or use a small part of the treatment somewhere else to keep the budget the same if you must.
So if people are coming to not necessarily Skin Viva, or because we want to educate everyone, if they go into another clinician, what kind of things should they look out for that the clinician is saying that would show to these guys that they are going to get a natural treatment and not just going to have their nose to mouth line blasted?
That's a good question. It's quite hard to answer. I think the key thing would be that you shouldn't feel that you should actually feel like it's the right thing to have your request analysed and explored.
Okay.
So that's the opposite of saying don't go to a vending machine. So this probably won't. If you're the kind of client who's very discerning, this is probably what you go for anyway. You go for advice and then you have the treatment depending on what the clinician said. But a lot of people don't do that. They go for the treatment and they expect that the clinician's role is to deliver the thing they've requested.
Yeah.
So I call that the vending machine style of treatment. Yeah. So ideally you shouldn't just vend what the patient asks you for. You should explore what, sometimes by the way, they're exactly right and it is the right treatment. So it's not to say that you can't change it, but you'd like the clinician to say, okay, you'd like to treat your nose to mouth line. What exactly is it that's bothering you about that? And then they'll often reveal their real reason that they're there, which is I feel like I'm older than I should do or something. And then it's over to the expert on faces to guide you on that. So you want to hear someone who's talking to you about ratios and how faces are perceived, the beauty, being holistic, harmony, kind of words like that are about bringing the face together as one structure, that isn't too focused on components. So you've got to get rid of that line or you won't be beautiful. Isn't necessarily true. You want to look healthy and your ratios and proportions need to be good. So you're looking for that.
So ratio and proportion. I think as well, isn't there something about, I know we've discussed this in previous ones, but about exploring their needs. So, because if I come to you and I'm like, I want my X doing, and then you suddenly just like, well, you don't need that. Don't be ridiculous. You need this. I think I'd be like, hang on there. Whereas if I was requesting you were a vending machine, but then you gently kind of asked me why and found out that I wanted to look fresh, you could then bounce off that and say, well, to do fresh, then we need the wider treatment. So I think, is there something about like having your need as patients' needs explored?
Yeah, well, you've got, I'll use an off-the-wall analogy, which is I remember having a blowout in the car when, a few years ago on the motorway. And, my need when I went to go and get my tyre fixed was superficially, I need a new tyre. But also I was a young dad who was worried about something happening to my kids in the car. And if the guy had asked me or had a tyre for me that was specifically around not having blowouts, I would have bought that tyre because that was my real need. So the superficial need is I need a new tyre, but the deeper need is I want to keep my family safe. It's a lot like that with facial aesthetics. Like superficial need is I've got this crease, but actually the underlying need is I want to look my best because I'm going back on the dating scene, or I'm trying to maintain myself for as long as possible, or I look sad when I'm not, or I look cross when I'm not. As soon as you get into the real reasons someone's there, then you can guide them to get the result that will actually meet that need. But they often think they have to do the diagnosis themselves. So they look in the mirror and say, I look tired. Maybe it's that crease. I know I'm going to get that crease treated and then maybe I'll feel better. And sometimes they're right, because a lot of people are fairly artistic and they know exactly what it is that's holding them back, and they go and request the treatment, and they should have that treatment. But there are times when they're wrong, and they're either copying a friend or hoping it's right, or they've noticed something when they just have an opinion on it because it bugs them, but it's not really the thing that's making them feel the way that they do about their appearance.
I think maybe another thing to watch out for in terms of looking weird is if you approach a clinician and then you're in and out the door in 15 minutes, having had basically no consultation, and you just said, I want my nose to mouth line treated, and then it gets shoved in. That's obviously going to be a danger point as well, I'd say. Yeah. What about, do you have any kind of celebrity examples of when things have gone a bit weird and wrong?
Well, I'll never forget I had a reaction to Courtney Cox. Obviously, I grew up with friends. I watched them when I was a teenager. We watched them all the way through our 20s, and they're almost felt like your friends. And then I saw this picture of her one day, and it was funny because I was only just learning. I was probably been doing cheeks myself for a year or something like that. So it was quite early on in my career, but I immediately felt this rage. I was like, how has someone done that to her? Because also you have the stereotype of a celebrity seeing a very skilled, Hollywood doctor, and you're thinking, how on earth could he possibly have justified doing that? Because her ratios are all wrong. So I have actually got a picture up here. And it's very obvious to anyone who knows her face that that's wrong. So we'll put it up on the screen so people can see. And
I wonder, is that one on the right? So she's had it rectified then? Because she looked...
The one on the right is either before or maybe it's rectified. I think she's had it rectified now. But at the moment I saw that picture, my reaction was, how can anyone justify doing this? They've just tried to solve all of her problems by putting lots of filler in her cheeks. And you can see, just to make people aware of the ratios, one of the things you're looking for with cheeks is that the curvature of the cheek, where it drops off, should meet the oral commissure, so the corner of your mouth. And you can see that her curvature is actually beneath that line. So they're too low. Right. And then they're also too wide because her eyes look a bit more central than they do normally. If you look at her in the after.
Why has that happened? I don't understand why the eyes look smaller.
Because everything else is bigger. So the face, it's all about harmony. So if you increase the size of the lateral projection of the cheek, then it makes your eyes look more central, like cat look. If you picture what a cat's face look like, they have this big flared outward, which suits a cat's ratio because they're cats. But she looks a kind of feline, but she isn't intending to be. And that's too much projection.
What about lips?
I'm not sure they were a major part of it. The other thing, just to answer your question about eye size, is if you've increased the cheek underneath and you smile, there's just more mass that's going to get squeezed up into the lower eye.
She's not even particularly smiling there, and it still looks terrible.
Yeah. So it's but that really made me sad because I thought there's no justification for it. No one has looked at the ratios. They've just put a lot of filler in, and presumably maybe they're trying to lift the lower face or something. But it made me sad because I felt.
What about? Because to be honest, when you show me that and I think about it, I feel a bit worried because I think, well, how? Like, who am I? Like, I've been in aesthetics for 11 years. I'm not a clinician, but let's just say I was, not in aesthetics, not a clinician. Like, am I just going to walk through the door and come out like that? Or is there something about celebrities going mad because they just keep pushing and pushing and they have loads and like maybe she's had 50 syringes or something? I don't know. Should we worry?
So there's two reasons it can happen. It can happen because the client is not interested in guidance. They specifically want something for their own reasons, and then they meet a clinician who's like, okay, if that's what you want. There is definitely an idea within the industry that as long as the client's happy, it's a job well done. Right. Which I disagree with. I think in aesthetics, you've got to meet the needs from both sides, from the inside out and from the outside in. So you can't, the client, you need to be doing a treatment that allows that person to feel free in themselves and project themselves and not worry about their appearance and just, almost be in their essence and live their life to the full. But that also needs to be done in a way that from the outside, people they don't actually hide their essence because they look so strange. There's a sense of meeting someone and really getting to connect with them, and then there's like you can't think about them because you're so distracted by their face. So that's what you're trying to do. I really think aesthetics is actually about allowing the inside of people to connect without the outside getting in the way, because you're projecting naturally and you're receiving people naturally, and there's no barrier. And I think a treatment like that's a barrier to communication because you're distracted by it. Yeah. So I don't think it's okay just to say, well, she was happy and that's how she wanted it. I think clinicians especially have a responsibility to try and get it right from both sides.
So maybe going back to my question earlier about what kind of things can you watch out for if you are getting a new clinician to make sure that they are good and that they will not make you fake. Maybe there's something about almost the clinician pushing back a little bit. I don't know whether you would necessarily, the average person would kind of get to that point.
Well, the best consultations, you don't notice the clinician pushing back. It's an exploration. You both agree on what the real problem is, which is, okay, you want to look better because you've just had a divorce and you've had a lot of stress in your life and you want to restore yourself, even though you came in here asking for 3 years of Botox. I understand why you're really here. And then there's a discussion on what next. What's the best way to meet that? What's the whole picture? What else? A clinician who actually hands you the mirror and asks you to describe what you're really seeing, as opposed to what you really think.
That's a good tip.
What you really think of what they're asking for, because a lot of the time they've made their decision in their bedroom at home, and then they come and request it. If you give them the mirror and say, "Well, tell me what it is you're actually seeing," they'll describe something totally different. So that would be the goal: is that you get the feeling the clinician's really interested in your experience, and then it's really that's really what you're paying for, is their expertise to guide you about how to get the result that you really want. Often people try and do that themselves. And as I said, they can be right, but they can also miss out important things that would really make it come together.
And another fear that I might have is that, will I go to the dark side? So let's say that, like, I think, I'm a sensible person, I'm not corny cock. She's obviously gone in there and pushed on her practitioner. But I have experienced the amazing post-treatment feeling. So how do we in ourselves prevent ourselves from going too far down the line and getting too pushy with our clinician?
Well, the first thing is the people who ask that question are rarely the ones who have to worry about. But you're right. There is definitely like a penny that drops in some people where they think this is the solution to everything. And they start basically looking for reasons to have treatments. What else can I have done? Yeah, and it does feel amazing. When you get it right, it's an amazing magical moment of like connecting with yourself again and feeling empowered, and off you go to live your life. But that feeling, I don't think it lasts as long as the treatment does. So you might have 6 to 12. I think it's 21 days actually the crucial number. There is some research into how long it takes you to adjust to a new appearance, and it's about 3 weeks. And after that point, you might still feel like things are in control and good, but you don't necessarily have that like can't stop thinking about it feeling.
Yeah, I'd say that's perfectly accurate for me.
Yeah. So if you're after that feeling again, you've only got one face, you can't just keep treating it to get that feeling all the time.
Every 21 days.
Yeah. So you need a clinician who recognizes that you're retail shopping. I call it it's like retail addiction, isn't it? So retail addiction is about newness. It's not about the fact that you need another handbag. It's about the fact that you love having a new handbag. And that people can make the mistake with their face. But usually just a discussion on it is all that you need, and most people will calm down a bit. Sometimes they don't calm down and they'll just go to different practitioners, and unfortunately they're the ones that I think are at risk of looking overdone eventually.
Okay. So it's not so much... So it sounds like what we need as members of the public, we need a good relationship with a great clinician.
Yeah. I think you need someone... I mean, I might have said years ago, you need someone who's going to guide you, who's going to basically, you trust and then you let them tell you what to do. But I've actually changed to this. It's an interface between two special skill sets, and it's your well-being and their expertise on faces. And you need to be working on understanding what it is you're really after, to control my appearance, to look fresh, to look young, to look attractive. Realize when it's a dead end you're chasing, like I'm chasing newness. Okay, I can't actually have that forever or I'll ruin my appearance. And then try and find a clinician who actually guides you to get a healthy outcome. And that should be a discussion that you have each time. And they should also give you the permission, which I always do with my patients, to say no to treatments as well. So I will say the outcome is your well-being. Some of the stuff I recommend may not resonate with you. A classic example would be temples. I often recommend...
Yeah. I was just going to bring up temples.
Yeah. Now, there are times when I'm a little bit more encouraging to have it. So you've experienced the result of it, but I think before you'd experienced the result, you wouldn't have necessarily thought it was going to make much difference. So I often use that as an example of sometimes it's not something you notice, but it does really improve your well-being because when you see the difference, you feel great. Other times you might see a difference and it just doesn't affect how you feel. In which case it may not be worth investing in that again because it's not having an impact. And as long as it's doing a little bit less, I don't worry about that. Doing more in the same way, I'm not so keen on. You obviously you don't want to over-treat in order to achieve that.
For me, temples are like, and I feel this way about tear troughs as well. Although tear troughs are more sexy than temples, I think people get tear troughs more. But they're both like the final jigsaw piece. I think if you have your cheeks done, and you aren't, and I had quite a skeletal look in my temples, and even though I've got a fringe and they're not, no one would ever stop me in the street and say, oh, you need to sort your temples out. But for me, it was really putting that final jigsaw piece in.
Yep.
So I would say as a piece of advice for anyone's watching, when you go to a great clinician, prepare yourself to be open-minded, and doesn't have to be a mega budget or anything, but just be open-minded. They might say, look, for this need that you have, which is to feel fresh, your temples would be a great option. And then if you've had that open-minded attitude before you come, I think you'll be more, otherwise you might be like, oh God, temples, it wasn't on my list. But I found it to be wonderful treatment. But then I was quite bad, sort of proportionally for my age, I think, in that area. So.
Yeah, well, you would say that, but probably other people wouldn't. There are lots of people who you just don't notice on, unless you look for it, you don't notice it. It's when you take it away, it's like you've been airbrushed or they've been photoshopped. They somehow look better, but you can never put your finger on what's changed. Yeah,
I think as well, like for me, the outcome now that I desire now is this airbrushed look. Which, the thing about the word airbrush, it could be a bit misleading because it sounds like it's just a very, very light, but sometimes it can be 10 syringes airbrushed. But the point is, it just gives you this gorgeous, holistic kind of just a slightly smaller shadow there. Just, and for me, that's what I desire now. And interestingly, recently I've noticed that my chin, don't worry, I'm not saying it looks bad or anything, but I've noticed that I've got a bit of a shadow going on here. And it literally is just a shadow. But it can really look... Anyway, my point is, now my new shopping list for my face is airbrushed and subtle. It's not... I think it's probably all it ever was, to be honest. But I literally think to myself, I want to take away a shadow. I don't think, I want new cheeks.
But that sometimes sounds like you're treating something that's hardly even there.
Right. So people might think what you're on about.
Yeah, but that's most of our treatments are not things that other people notice. But they do perceive it. So it's a different to it's not conscious. It's an unconscious sense of looking good or fresh or healthy. And that's what you perceive that as well. That's why you've noticed the difference. And when you've already seen what it's like when it's not there and it looks great. It's like it's more of a feeling that you get rather than a specific, it's not like you've changed the color of your hair or something like that. It's just somehow that you're looking good.
Exactly. But I think you've raised a really good point there, which is people are probably looking at me thinking, what? Like, stop chasing these little. So I get that, and I thank you. I respect that point of view. But for me, it's just about restoration. It's just about almost having the wind under my sails. That's all I'm after. And I think to myself, well, if I can, why don't I just get an extra bit of? It's just like buying a lipstick or something. You just want a little bit more of a pick me up. That's all I ever want.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I always try to imagine it. It's that feeling that you're almost like ready to confront life. Yeah. And everything's in order, and you can go forth and project yourself well. It's exactly the same as I would feel putting a suit on. Yeah, exactly. Or having a treatment as well. Yeah.
Oh, fab, exciting. Thank you. So let us know if that's been of any use in terms of, for you guys, navigating your way through this landscape, which can feel tricky and can feel like it's hard and you worry about looking fake. So let us know if that's helped you at all. And please do share and tag any friends who are always kind of saying to you, I don't want to look fake. Please do tag them below and we can share the joy. And let us know about if there are any other topics that you would like us to tackle, either kind of interesting sort of like society topics, or if they just be straightforward clinical, if we can talk to Tim or the other clinicians and sort of pick their brains. So do let us know any other topics you would like to discuss. Otherwise, we'll look forward to seeing you next time on Real Talk. Take care.
Thanks for watching.